I'm the project lead of a ILC grant, and it was a 2-year grant, and it's been really amazing. We call it the grant that keeps on giving because it's been extended 3 times. So we're now in our 5th year, and in this year I've been very fortunate that we've been able to bring a colleague on, and Josh Fergie, if you wouldn't mind just giving a wave. Josh is with me, he's working in the project alongside me, and it's been wonderful having him bring new eyes and fresh energy into the project. And basically, as I said, we've got till June, but there are small thoughts that maybe it's going to be extended again. So let's hope, because there needs to be continual and conscious efforts to keep talking about meaningful work for people with disability. And this was basically our project aim, was that we wanted to get out and to share information about meaningful work for people with disability, and that everybody has strengths and passions and can work. So to also change those expectations, to really talk about assumed capacity, and to do that we knew the best way was to share stories of people, enterprise owners, and we invited 7 people initially, 7 enterprise owners that we worked alongside with to help them share their stories. And I'm going to share 2 of those stories today, because nothing's more powerful than hearing it from someone themselves. And they say if you see it, you can believe it. And I see it on a daily basis, and I believe it, and I just, it's really important that we share this. So initially we thought we'd share that with Metropolitan Adelaide and regional South Australia, but we've been so fortunate that we've also been able to share nationally as well, and really collaborate with other people, and especially the NACBO organisations. But before we really talk about microenterprise, I think this is an important thing to just discuss briefly. Work is funny, I don't know about you, but sometimes on a Sunday night you'll think, oh, I've got work tomorrow. I don't now because I love what I do, but I did for a long time. I think, oh, I've got work tomorrow, I've got this happening. And, we can sort of get into this feeling of talking about work in a fairly negative way. But really, apart from income, which is obviously a major part of why a lot of people work, there are so many benefits, so much value from work that it brings us, that we forget at times to reflect on that. So just for 30 seconds, I really want you to have a think about what work has meant to you through your life, whether that's paid or unpaid work. What benefits, perhaps, has it brought to you more than just income? So just have a little think. And then if anyone's brave enough, can someone share some of those thoughts about what value of work is for you? Anybody want to share their thoughts? Yep. Advocacy. Can you explain that a little bit?
I'm a community service coordinator. I range from young to old, so advocating with the community to create a different culture.
Okay, great, thank you. So contribution, yeah. Anyone else?
Sense of purpose.
Purpose, absolutely, yeah. Helps you know what you're doing, Gillian?
Relationships, meeting more people.
Yeah. I've had 3 sort of careers. My first one was as a teacher, and I actually taught at a school once where everybody was married to everybody. It was really weird. But, they'd met their partners through work, and that was really common. So relationships, absolutely. Some of my best friends are people I've worked with. Anyone else? Yeah?
So giving back to the community or society.
Yeah, so giving back, contribution, that's such an important thing, being able to contribute, yeah?
A sense of structure and routine in your life?
Absolutely. I don't know about you, but the first week of a holiday is always, if I'm home and it's over the Christmas break, the first week is like, I love this, no routine, I can do what I want. Second week I'm like, I'm writing lists because I've got to know what I'm doing each day. So, yeah, routine. And look, we could keep going, but the reality is when I ask this question, these are some of the common words, and they're words that you've shared today. So satisfaction, stimulation, collaboration, purpose, achievement, enjoyment, relationships, belonging, routine, income, identity, pride, contribution, and status. And so, I share these sorts of talks, and these are the words that come up. And why this is important, why we need especially parents to understand how powerful work is that we must see the importance of work. If we don't see it, 4 years ago, Anne Greer spoke at Let's Get to Work conference that Imagine More put on, and her line was, she said, people always say, well, why do they need to work? They get the pension, don't they? You know, and that is where it stops for a lot of people. They say, well, we don't need to work. But if we don't have these things, if we're not benefit to the value of work and these feelings and values, what is the opposite? You know, what is the opposite of purpose and routine and belonging and contribution? And sadly, these feelings, these values and benefits are often denied to people with disability because barriers are put up and there's an expectation that they don't need to work, or worse, that they can't work. So I think it's always really important that we sort of really understand about work and remind ourselves of how important work is as well. And this is something I also like to share, is that if we're talking about typical pathways from school, what tends to happen for a student without disability is that at school in their senior years, they're probably going to get a part-time job. They might do some work experience, or they will do work experience, hopefully it's relevant. And there will be discussions about careers, career counselling and what's beyond. That's just how it goes. And then when they leave school, normally people will do these sorts of things. They'll either decide to study, whether it's an apprenticeship or at a university or a TAFE. They might go directly into work. They might decide to take a gap year. It's quite a accepted thing in Australia to have a gap year. But what we know, and those of you in the room who've got young adult children certainly know that if they go to study, they'll probably change the course they're going to do because they chop and they change, and maybe study wasn't quite right. Maybe they should have had that gap year, or they're finding it really hard financially, so they might decide to stop that and work. Or if they've worked, they thought, maybe I should have travelled, or if I was, you know. So it's dynamic, it changes, and it's going to keep changing. And that's what we know. This is what we see, and this is what we know will happen for someone without a disability. But if we can compare that to what I see and what I hear about students with disability in their senior schools, certainly in South Australia, I hope Queensland's different, but in South Australia, there's little to no career counselling going on. Really, there's none. We might as well just call it and say there's none. There's no meaningful work experience unless you call work experience at an ADE meaningful. There's an assumption that that's where they're going to go anyway. And no one's seeming to think that we should get part-time jobs. So part of my work is that for the last 3 years I've been working with about 130 students a year in the education department in their final year of school, and I ask those questions to all those year 12 students. I say, who's got a part-time job? No one. Who's done work experience? No one. Who knows what they want to do next year? Again, I must be a crier because I often go to my car and sit and cry for a little bit because I feel sad. Leaving school, it's the start of the next phase of life. It should be an exciting, dynamic time full of opportunities and options. And that's what this project's about. It's not saying that other things aren't okay, but it's about increasing options. We want people to know that there are more than just the pathways of ADEs, day option programs, or sadly nothing. Because what we also know is that where people tend to go when they leave school is where they stay. There's less changes. Is it okay if we take questions at the end? Can you hold that? No, go ahead.
That's a quick one.
Yeah.
What does AD?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, there's so many assumptions, aren't they? So an Australian Disability Enterprise, so in the old language sheltered workshop. So I'm not sure what ones you have. We have some fairly large ones in Adelaide. So there's a big expectation that a lot of people with disability will work in the old language sheltered workshop. So let's get on to microenterprise, and just so that you know, the definition that I'm referring to today is this, that a microenterprise is a form of customised employment which is crafted around a person's personal interests, gifts and talents and available resources to create a quality product or service. A microenterprise starts with the person first, then a job role is crafted, not the other way around. And that definition is really why I think there's such success with a microenterprise. When it's right for the person, because it's not right for everybody, and that's okay too. But when it's right for the person and it's thoughtfully done, then starting with the person and building that role around strengths and interests is the key to success. And I mentioned that we had 7 enterprise owners that we invited at the beginning. We've since added some more, but these were the original enterprise owners that agreed to share their stories. And today I don't have time to introduce or share the stories of everyone, but I will talk in a minute. I've been asked to share Josh's story, or Jocelyn McCann of Dried Fruits. Oh, sorry, I hope you're hearing me all right. I'm going in and out a bit. Yeah, okay, thank you. And Tom as well, with my parent hat on. But that's just to show you Flowers by Fleur, Greens to You, Dried Fruits by Jocelyn, Huzzah, Jack's Gems, Something for Stella, and Ground Control by Major Tom. So we're very, very grateful for those enterprise owners because, and at the end, there's a slide that has details of my email address and Community Living Project website. And if you click on to the website and go into micro enterprise, you can see each of the individual videos. They range from 3 to 8 minutes, and I strongly encourage you, if you're interested in this area, watch those videos in your own time. They're all different because everybody is unique, but they're powerful stories, and they're sitting there, and please feel free to share. So I just like to always add this slide. I don't know if it really fits right in this spot, but it's such a strong message. If we start filling time, we get activities. If we start filling roles, time takes care of itself. Okay, so what we see a lot is people's lives are often, people with disability, their lives can be quite busy. You know, there's the coffee morning, there's the shopping, and there's a lot of allied health in there often. There's a physio and a speech and a lot of things that take up a lot of time. And sometimes people are quite reluctant to move those if they don't feel there's a good replacement. And we certainly wouldn't want to encourage people to move things that are necessary or give back as well. But we do see that a lot of people are busy with just filling time with activities. Once we start to look at valued roles such as employment, having a job, having a career, time really does take care of itself. And I'd just like to take this opportunity. We've been very fortunate to bring a few families from Adelaide with us. We have Jess in the room today. Jess is on the left, Jess Menzies. Jess, would you give everyone a wave? Thank you. Jess is an artist, and thank you, Jess. And she's here accompanied by her parents, Julianne and Jeff. And Jess is an artist and has a business called Ajar Homewares. She's, I was showing my husband her art last night, and he couldn't believe it. It was just fabulous art, and she reproduces her products, her art onto homewares like tea towels. So Jess is here, and over the course of today and tomorrow, please reach out and chat to these people because they're happy to tell you their story, their own journey. On the right, we've got Reese Baker. Reese is right back in the corner with his mum, Veronica. Thanks, Reese. Reese has got a micro enterprise that's a little less than a year. Chisel Design. He's a woodmaker. He makes beautiful, uses recycled wood and makes planter boxes and is expanding. So I think you probably came along to something like this once and got inspired to start your micro enterprise. So again, those people in the room, and also David. I'll just give you an acknowledgement. David Southwell as well. So he's come up from Adelaide. So please feel free to chat to these people as well, these families. All doing amazing work. But I've been asked specifically to talk about 2 people today, and the first is a lady called Jocelyn. Now, if you go onto our website, there's a longer version of this. There's a little bit of a story first, and then what I'm going to show you. But because of time, I'll just give you a little bit of information about Jocelyn. So Jocelyn was a lady who grew up in foster care, and then lived in institutions until she was 21. So Jocelyn is deaf and legally blind and has very complex mental health issues and disability. She at one stage had the title of being the most difficult person in South Australia to support. What a title. She received 2-on-1 support 24/7, so she was really seen as not able to be educated or definitely not able to work. I'm going to show you Jocelyn's video now. Jocelyn is now in her mid-50s. She lives in her own home. She was actually, it was her grandmother who at the time of changing from institutions, who reached out to CLP and to my manager, Jane Barrett, who said, she looked for help and said, you know, if Jocelyn goes into a group home, it's going to be disastrous. And that was the start of Jocelyn's connection with CLP, and she was one of the first micro-enterprise owners. She's about to celebrate 11 years as a micro-enterprise owner, but I'll just show you that video now.
So this is Jocelyn. Joss is the business owner of Dried Fruit by Jocelyn, and this is Tracy. Tracy is Joss's enterprise PA. As you saw from the video, Joss has come a long way in her life, and her business is a big part of that. And so her business name is Dried Fruit by Jocelyn, and the business has been going since 2013. So that's over 7 years of business, which is a huge achievement. So Joss's product is snack-size bags of mixed dried fruit. They're really good for cheese platters and just a snack in the middle of your workday. So it's a healthy alternative as a snack. And Joss's customers are cafes, gyms, fruit and veg shops, all sorts of businesses around the local Adelaide area. And so why a micro-enterprise? Well, Joss has not been considered suitable for day options or sheltered workshops. Lots of things have been explored. Joss has tried a number of different activities and volunteer roles to create purpose in her week and a meaningful week. And some of those things have worked really well for periods of time, and some of them not so much. People who knew Joss well thought that having an enterprise could be just the right thing, because there could be a variety of tasks that are designed to be interesting for Joss, and it might just create that meaning and purpose in the week that Joss is lacking. Now she works 4.5 days a week, and the reason this particular business type was created for Joss was that, as you saw in the video, Joss is really into cooking and food. Joss has got really excellent fine motor skills, so in this business there's a lot of peeling of fruit and cutting fruit in very exact size slices, and Joss is really skilled at that. Joss loves to be out and about in community, and she loves to be out in the car, and so with this business there's a lot of shopping for items and delivering to customers. This business was put together to suit all of Joss's particular interests and circumstances. So for Joss's enterprise, it was really important to have a really good PA working with Joss from the beginning. The PA is the personal assistant for the business, and Tracy, who's here today, has been the PA right from the very beginning. And so for Joss, it's so important that the person to start this business with her was someone who she knew well and trusted, and who could sign really well with Joss. An enterprise management group was put together. That group meets regularly, especially at the beginning of the business. The group met at least once a month, because there was lots of things to consider. Things like branding, logo, business name, the pricing of the product, and making sure the products are of extremely high quality. Marketing, promotions, setting up of work tasks. Recruitment of a PA is a role of the management group, overseeing the finances, and also looking at legal matters. For Joss being a food business, the management group consulted the local council area, who needed to certify that her work area was up to standard. Perhaps Tracy, you could ask Joss what she's doing in these photos.
Peeling pears.
Peeling pears.
Just saying that that's Jocelyn and she's peeling pears.
Yeah, so peeling pears, there's a lot of peeling that goes on in this business, and Joss will begin the week by buying fresh fruits, and Joss and Tracy have worked out who sells the nice fresh seasonal fruits and the good pricing of fruit. They'll come back, and as you can see, Joss is wearing the hairnet and gloves, which is specification. She's peeling and then coring the fruit, cutting the fruit into exact pieces, and then putting them into a dehydrator, which goes overnight on a timer. And so, yeah, once the fruit's dried overnight, it's taken out and put into jars, airtight jars. And then once the fruit's been jarred up, then it's put into the packaging and delivered to the customers. Also, with the branding, Joss has a jacket with her logo on it and an apron when she's doing her work. So it's important because it signifies the difference between a work day and a non-work day. So when your work clothes are on, that's a work day, and you're ready to roll for work. And so in this slide, there's a whole bunch of pictures of Joss delivering to her customers. I kind of reckon this might be her favourite bit, Tracy. There's a work lunch that goes with that, which is also something Joss really enjoys. It's kind of a reward for the week's labours. So Joss's business is now 7.5 years down the track, which is amazing. It's a really successful business. Joss is ready on time for her work days with her work clothes on and into her tasks, knowing what happens and what comes next. The business has expanded on the days. It was 3 days a week to start with, now is 4.5 days a week. And Joss is engaged for that whole period of time. And Joss seems to enjoy her business, and the routine and predictability of the business works for Joss, and her life is more consistent now and has purpose. And Joss really enjoys her business.
Jocelyn was someone, as I said, that was seen as very difficult to support and wouldn't get out of bed for a lot of things. There was a situation a few years back where she doesn't have support overnight anymore, by the way. So she lives in her own home independently with supports coming in and out. She normally has a morning support to come in and help her get ready for the morning, and then maybe later in the evening. On this particular day, the support didn't turn up for some reason. And when the PA arrived to start work with Jocelyn, Jocelyn was there, ready, dressed in her work gear. She knew it was a work day. Now that's may not sound big, but it's a big deal. She knows work, she loves work, and she's there ready, out and about in the community. We did some other videos after this one, and there's one with, it was about the benefits of micro-enterprise as well, and Jocelyn went out to a store to do some deliveries, and I was there on the filming day, and the cafe owner has started to learn signing so that she can communicate with Jocelyn. So, by being out and present and contributing as a business owner, it's like, when Dan was saying about Samuel's a teacher, Jocelyn's a teacher too. And so it flows, the benefits and the reasons are so important. And just, as I said, remember this was someone who was seen as not able to learn or to work, and 4.5 days with an 11-year business. The statistic in Australia is that all small businesses fail in the first year. 50% of businesses will fail. That's just for anybody. And there she is, 11 years on. Now this is where I swap hats and I put my my mum hat on, and I don't normally do this because I sort of don't want you to think I'm just up here to talk about my son, but this is Tom, and I've been asked to share his story as a mum, and I'm very proud to do so. This is Tom Neale. He's 27, and that's him in his work gear. So I start off by saying that David and I, so my husband David is actually here today too, so David, have a wave. I'm introducing half the crowd, aren't I? but I like to do that because I've been so fortunate with my work and the people I've met, and people often say, "Wow, Tom has a great life. Well done." Well, I'm the face of that, but I've got an amazing support team. So our family, so his dad David and his sister Hannah, we've always seen Tom as capable. We've always assumed that. It wasn't a view that was shared by a lot of people. So he went to a mainstream school, but then a unit in high school. And whilst we thought he would work, I remember one day getting told that Tom had been assessed while he was at school. I didn't know that was happening. It was pre-NDIS, and that he would be going to a day option program when he left school. And I said, "Thank you very much, but no thanks," and spoke to the department at the time. I'd been really fortunate that a year before I had met Jane Barrett from CLP and I'd come to the Belonging Matters conference, so I already thought, no, we're not going down that path. It would have been so problematic for Tom to go into a day options program for so many reasons, but also what a waste of a young, strong man who wanted to work. So I'll just give you a little bit. One of the keys, I think, was that we because having an older sister, we had the benefit of seeing her pathway, and we tried to really emulate that and just go down some typical paths. So when he was 14 and 10 months, which is the age in South Australia when you can start getting a job, that's when his sister got a part-time job. So it was certainly when we said to Tom about getting a part-time job. Now, it wasn't quite so easy, but he decided to wash cars. So part-time job. Washing cars, starting to understand you've got to do something to earn money. He did blow up a few of our vacuum cleaners doing that, so we moved him on because he used to get stuck on vacuuming on a mat, but anyway, he did that. We also wanted him to have meaningful work experience, and that wasn't being offered by schools, so we found some ourselves. We knew at this stage that he liked to be outside. Again, round about 14, I remember saying to David, we had quite a few lawns at our house at that stage. We had a big piece of land. And I said, Tom needs to learn to mow. And David said, oh, it's really dangerous. And so my response was, well, teach him to be safe. Because everybody has to learn how to be safe when they mow, and he did. And we realised that he really liked that. He liked the rhythm of mowing. He liked the fact that he got a result. He was outside and he didn't have to have a lot of people around him. It was physical. It gave him that sensory feedback that he craved. And so we knew that he liked to be outside. So when we look for work experience, we look for outside. And he got a volunteer job doing work experience 1 day a week in his last year of school. At a aged care facility as an assistant gardener there, just helping out, which was really fantastic. So he started to build up his work hardiness, because all of us have to learn how to go from school to work. It's a big transition. So he started to understand that you've got to get up, you've got to be on time, you've got to wear certain clothes, and you've got to turn up. And if you can't, you've got to let someone know that. So it all started back then. And then as I said, I met Jane Barrett from CLP, and the planets lined up, and we knew that a micro-enterprise was going to be something that we would want to try for Tom. We already sort of knew, I've been going forward, haven't I? Sorry. We already had this pretty well in mind, but the organisation helped us bring it together. So that was 8.5 years ago. And this morning, it's 39 degrees in Adelaide today, but Tom's out working, okay? So he's out in that sun, and he goes out in the rain. We don't get a lot, not like you guys, but he does do that. And he's up at 5 o'clock in the morning, dressed and ready. He's charged his batteries. He's put on his work clothes. That's a big deal. When Tom was in high school, we had to get special permission for him not to wear school uniform, but to wear a plain top instead of the woolen jumper because of his sensory issues. He now wears work boots and work clothes because that's part of work, and his motivation is so strong to be out there working that he doesn't even feel those clothes anymore. So he's up, he's made his own lunch, and he's on time. I never got Tom to school on time. Sorry if there's any educators in the room, but he used to actually vomit sometimes on the way to school down the side of the car. It was so stressful for him. And I'd drag him in, and after I'd dragged him out of bed. So it's a pretty big deal when people ask me what work I do. They, after a while, glaze over, because they shouldn't ask me that if they don't really want to hear, because I'm super passionate about this, because I work in this space, but I live it. I live it and I see it. And not only has this changed Tom's life, but it's changed our life. I'm here. I've been able to come away. There's no way. I asked Tom, would you like to come and present? No, it's a work day. Okay, so it has changed our life. Now, doesn't mean that it was always easy, doesn't mean that it was always right, but it started small, and I think that's the key. We knew Tom could work. We believed in his capacity. We had high expectations. And so if I was writing down, I thought, well, what has he learnt as well? What has he gained over this period of time? Because one of the things someone said before about the value of work is the ability to keep learning and to contribute and to be an advocate. So what has he learnt? So some of the things, like I said, he's learnt to get ready on time, to look at his own time management skills. He now makes his own lunch. and dresses himself in the appropriate clothes. He uses a weather app, so he looks at what the temperature's going to be and knows if it's hot and he needs to change his workday to start a bit earlier. These are things that he's learned over 8 years. None of them were quick or straight away. Initially, it was just getting out in the car. He's learned how to fill up a car with petrol. He changes his own batteries. He uses Google Maps. And he's learnt about the streets of Adelaide. And now when we go out, I ask him how we get somewhere because he's out in the car every day and he loves being in the car and going out with his PA. He has a work diary and he looks at the map and works out the order of the jobs based on the sense that it makes and the time. His pride is second to none of when someone says, "What do you do, Tom?" And he says, "I have my own business." And I can tell you the body language of people changes immediately when you tell somebody you have your own business. They suddenly see you as capable, and when you're seen as capable, good things come your way. It flows on. There are benefits that I couldn't have imagined. He's learnt he's a public speaker. He's understood more about the value of money. He knows that if he wants to go and buy his very expensive subway, because he has all sorts of things on it, that's the equivalent of standing out mowing lawns for an hour. So he's learnt it through the real life experience. He's learnt and used some basic first aid. His PA recently got bitten by a redback and they saw a brown snake. So he's learning and he's a teacher of skills. When he has someone fill in of his PA, that's Dylan, by the way. Dylan is a young man, 28, who's been with Tom 4.5 years. I tell you what, if there's something I've learnt through Tom, it's to have faith. There are such good people. Dylan is literally heaven sent. He won't be there forever, we know that. People come and go. But he's Tom's third PA, and every time, and in fact that was my biggest fear when Tom started, was how are we going to find somebody to do this? How are we going to find someone who's going to be able to work half a day and then 2 days? Because Tom started off half a day a week with 2 customers. He now works 4 days a week and has 70 regular customers. And he's out there, as I said, in the rain. When he was younger at school, if he got splashed or got wet, he took his clothes off. He couldn't bear the feeling. He's now out there in the occasional bit of rain we have. So, you know, as a parent, the growth that we've seen is quite incredible. And of course, his skills in mowing and gardening has increased a long way too. But that continual opportunity for growth and learning, done in a really progressive but positive strength-based way, is so important. His confidence has grown so much that it's generalised into other areas of his life. He's dropped virtually all his allied health appointments. He doesn't need an OT anymore or a speech therapist. He uses his messaging that's grown. He talks to his customers. He's built relationships. 2 years ago, he got the keys for his own apartment and he started having a night a week there. He's built up to 4 nights a week. He now lives without support overnight. But most importantly, when he moved in, we held a morning tea to get him to know some of his other people in the apartment block. And when they said to him, "Oh, Tom, what do you do?" and he said, "Oh, I have a gardening business," he was seen straight away as Tom the gardener, not Tom the person with autism. So it changed the way people saw him. And in fact, he has been pulled upon a few times since he's been in there. That garden bed at the bottom, I'm showing that there's 2 of those in his apartment block. And the committee asked him if he had could help with this gardening to replace the soil and build something else, because it was just a mess, the whole thing. So he with a couple of mates came along and spent quite a few hours over a couple of weekends wheelbarrowing tons of soil. Unbelievable, you know, so the pride. So he's seen as a really valuable resident in his apartment. And if he hadn't been able to answer that, I don't know how he would have been seen. So, you know, work is the most important thing to Tom. He wouldn't come this weekend because he'd miss work. It gives him routine, opportunities to contribute, purpose, relationships, satisfaction, stimulators, status, identity, pride, all those things we mentioned before. It ticks all those boxes. And I want you to remember, school thought he should go to day options. Okay, so he could have. But, you know, when I talk to Tom now, it's like, this is the most important thing. So if you're thinking that this could be something you could explore, these are some of the things you might want to consider as a family member or a person. about what would you want to change. What are the experiences of your day and the time in your life that needs to change? Is that person's life just too much about activities, too much allied health? Are there some things though that are so important, things that are connecting you in genuine ways to community, so important that you want to keep them in place? So those are some of if we're doing something at the beginning with a person, it's called discovery. And good discovery takes time. Okay, it's not an overnight thing, it's not a quick fix. It takes time to really get to know a person. Everybody has strengths and interests and passions and ability. And sometimes we see people whose behaviours or the deficits that they're often referred as can be the things that can be flipped to become a positive. So some of you heard stories about people who just want to sit and watch TV. They can become the waiters of a business. People that you have, how you've ask Telstra to come and fix your line and they say I'll be there between 9 and 5 one day next week, and you've got to take all that time off work. Well, there are people who've decided that they can be a waiting service. So Emily from Shredham, she would come into a room and cause a bit of chaos, but she loved to shred. So her shredding business, she shreds information, documents for people she can't read, so it's confidential. She's able to shred them and then it's donated to the Adelaide Zoo for the pandas. If you know anything about our pandas, we've just got 2 new ones because the last 2 were duds. They didn't procreate, they were supposed to. They're the most expensive pandas in the world. But her shredding actually goes to those pandas. So highly valued areas that we're looking at. So again, what are the gifts, talents and interests of the person? Everybody. Sometimes we have to dig a bit deeper, especially if they've had a life of being told about all the things they can't do and they've started to believe that themselves or the family believes it. Sometimes we have to dig a bit deeper, but everyone has something. Who are the people and the families and what are the networks? Normally, this works best. We know families have been doing this for years without organisations. You get it everywhere. Strong, families like the Habibs who believe and just going to make things happen. But sometimes for people like Jocelyn, without any informal supports around them, sometimes it takes others to step in. So trying to identify those things are important. What personal resources does the person have? Have they got a space to work? Have they got equipment, people to assist, start-up funds? Sometimes people will start with something as little as $50, right up to $50,000 depending on the enterprise, but that needs to be taken into account too. So Fleur, who had her flower business, literally bought 10 $5 IKEA vases and got flowers donated, and that's how she started Flowers by Fleur. A young man, Isaac, who's got a food delivery business, his parents were able to afford a refrigerated truck, and so there's everything in between. But we need to be realistic about that. But again, there are ways to get money, and Tom's initial equipment was donated by a service club. What do we know about the person's stamina? This is the benefit of customised employment. When we really know about the person, we can work out what works best. Are you a morning person? Are you an evening person? Are you better to work 2 solid days or 4 mornings? Fleur, again, had uncontrolled epilepsy, but we knew that her seizure activity was greater in the afternoon, so her business was scheduled to work in the morning. These are the sort of considerations. You're not squeezing into anyone else's routine or schedule. And, what are the ideas floating? Don't dismiss them. Think about those ideas and expand those mind mapping exercises. Often people think they've got an idea, but when it's teased out, it might not be the one, and that's okay. And funding. I put it last because like when Mark said this morning, funding is part of the process. It's not all of it. So a lot of families, I'm sure, would have had limited funding before or even now with the NDIS. It doesn't have to be what makes it successful. So don't get hung up on the funding first. Dream big, hold high expectations. We've recently started this a Facebook page called Discover Microenterprise Exploring Possibilities. It's a page that's not linked specifically to CLP. We want to share stories and information about microenterprise all around Australia. So please like it if you've got stories you'd like to contribute. We'd love to see more. We want to get this out. As I said, we want more people to know microenterprise as a genuine option for people with disability. We want to add it so that there's choice. And that's my details. And I'd be happy to, if you want more information, please look at our website, email me. We're happy to email a page of videos, and they've got the links to them. I'll encourage you to look at those. But yes, that's it. Thank you. So anyone, any questions?
Thanks so much, Helen. So much to think about in that presentation, but I think the main thing that stands out for me is this idea that the families and the allies and the teams of the person have to have the belief, because like with Helen's son, my brother was told he was unemployable by services, by his school. He also has his own business now. So you've got to hold the belief as the family, because sometimes no one else